Welcome back to another episode of Impossible Equals Impossible. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Man, I always love doing these shows, always another incredible guest. And I always just talk about the whole point of why this show was created was because so many times when people reach success, they don't talk about a lot of the challenges and the obstacles that they had to overcome to kind of get to where they were at, right? And through social media, we tend to see the highlight reel of everyone's life where people just want to put themselves in the best light, per se, right? And we all know that that's not really real. And I was really inspired to create this show because when I came onto LinkedIn, I had experienced a lot of people through their layoffs going through some of the toughest challenges that they had to experience. And there was a lot of, I don't want to say negativity, but a lot of people needed inspiration, right? And I thought, what better way than to create a show called Impossible Equals Impossible, because so many people felt like they were in that impossible position. To what better way to give them a role model and somebody to really kind of look at that has been where they are and overcame it, and have them share a lot of their stories. So as a lot of you know, right, I do a lot of collaboration on LinkedIn. I have so many incredible people in my network. The guest that we have today is my brilliant co-host. Yes, I'm so happy, Amber. I was so concerned on whether or not this darn chat thing would work. I'm so happy it does. So I'm happy to see you. So great to see you, my friend. Where was I? Oh, yes. My guest this week, my brilliant co host. I talk about her all the time as being one of the most brilliant people that I've met on LinkedIn, Dr. Leslie Flowers. You've probably seen her because we do a weekly audio event together called What Are You Thinking? And man, my mind gets blown every single time I get to learn from her, and she's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to read you guys just a small little snapshot of who Dr. Leslie is. She's one of my closest connections. She's a dear friend, but Dr. Leslie Flowers is one of the most brilliant people I have met. And her life journey, for me, every time I hear about her stories and adventures, it blows me away. And it's one of the most fascinating stories because she's been a coach and a speaker for 15 years, a global expert when it comes to think and grow rich and setting and achieving goals. She spent 45 years in corporate publishing, 30 years in personal development. You all know how much I love personal development. She's published 10 books and done 150 masterminds since 2008. I am in my second mastermind since 2008. So, just to give you kind of an idea on how powerful that is, she's also done so many incredible things personally, professionally. And yeah, with no further ado, Dr. Leslie Flowers, my brilliant co host. So great to see you today. Happy Wednesday. Did this thing work? Here, there you are. Happy Wednesday, Dr. Leslie. Thank you so much for being here. A lot
Sure.
of you, oh, what I didn't mention is I gave her the name Dr. Leslie because she has 20,000 hours of Think and Grow Rich, basically. So I'm pretty sure it's 10,000, right? That's considered like honorary doctorate. Is that right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like a master? Yeah,
yeah.
incredible. And before we get started, let's say hello to some people. Oh man, there's lots of people here. Amber, so good to see you. Laura, so great to see you as well. Angelica, so great to see you, my friend. So, Dr. Leslie, obviously, I know you a lot better than a lot of the people here. Who is Dr. Leslie? And kind of tell us about, I mean, 45 years in corporate publishing, 30 years of personal development. We didn't even get into kind of the unique things that you've kind of done in your life. Like she's an incredible singer. You know, maybe we'll see that towards the end, maybe. But yeah, who's Dr. Leslie, and how did you kind of get to this point of really becoming a master when it comes to setting goals and thinking we're rich?
Mm, great question. I really have lived a blessed life, right? I mean, there are certainly downs, plenty of them. Family life wasn't ideal, but whose is, right? But I had a mom who wanted me to do, I think, all the things that she didn't do. So she would take me to the Boston Conservatory of Music. We lived in Natick, Massachusetts, so that I could study ballet and modern dance as a young girl at the conservatory, right? And so she put me in musical comedy and dance. I did ballet for 8 years and I was on point. So I was really grateful that I had those skills, and it really went along with my personality. I'm really outgoing. I'm a double Sagittarius with Virgo rising. I get a lot of ideas, and I used to let everybody else finish them for me, but now I finish them myself. So I went to San Francisco State, which was the number two drama school in the US in the 60s, second to Carnegie Tech, and worked with the best in the theater. In my high school days, I got into UCLA one summer between junior and senior year and performed on stage for Burt Lancaster. You may have to look him up, people. Right? He's the long gone, but very famous actor. And so I went to San Francisco State, and then I didn't want to finish. So I decided that I wanted to be a stewardess and I wanted to go to Japan. I wanted to travel there. And I had flown domestically for Northwest, but now I was ready to go to the Far East. And it was really costly to go on your own as a vacation. So I thought, well, I'll just become a stewardess. And that's exactly what I did. I spent 2 days in Hawaii, 2 days in the Philippines, dropped the guys off in Vietnam, picked up the ones going home, 2 days in Tokyo, and then home through Anchorage, Alaska, bringing the guys home, or Fort Dix, New Jersey. And there I lived down the street from Janis Joplin, big brother in the holding company, drove a 1960 TR3 convertible. And when I would come home from my trips going across the Bay Bridge, it was always midnight, or it was certainly dark. And I was in my little TR3 with the top down, blasting Cream, which is a band, right? And the song is In a White Room with Black Curtains at the Station. I don't know if you remember that one. And I would sing in the middle of the night because I had just been on 10 days going around the world.
Wow.
So how do I don't know how I got here. It's just kind of I'm an adventurer and I'm a
Yeah,
philosopher.
for sure. I can definitely gauge that from a lot of the things, especially how you talked about like music and the arts were like a huge influence on you. I'm curious for you, what has really kind of being able to travel the world, how has that in many instances kind of shaped your perspective, right? Because you taught me probably one of the most profound things that I've learned this year. And I've never heard anybody say that, but and I believe it was one of the first things that you taught me when we first met. And you said that everybody thinks that they are right and they are for themselves. And I'm curious, like, because I've never heard anybody say that before. Did you kind of learn that through traveling and like being across these
No,
different
that I
places?
learned that I learned over the last 15 years studying the mind, the conscious mind, and understanding how beliefs work. We believe what we believe and it's true for us. So this business of trying to convince people to do it your way based on your standards and ideals, right? And your values, it doesn't work. When people say you should do it this way, well, why should I? Right? So I began to learn how to ask questions, which is something that you do, and I would say, well, have you ever considered this? Would you be interested in a conversation about this? This is another way to do it. Are you open to that? And with a lot of practice, I'm now able to speak using words that don't have a trigger for most people. Right. And what was your question again? I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, I was just curious because it's for me, I know I didn't really understand how grateful I was to be an American until I kind of left. Right. And you talked about how
Uh,
you've gotten to travel like
yeah,
all
yeah,
over
yeah,
the
yeah.
world and do all these type of
I didn't
things.
learn any of that. I was all in my ego. I was the 125-pound stewardess in a designer suit, right? With 2 days in a hotel in Hawaii and on the beach, 2 days in the Philippines, eating the best food, getting clothes made, listening to music, drop them off, pick them up. Right? I mean, really, the soldiers were. While I love doing it, right, but our goal as stewardesses was to see how many badges and emblems we could get from the guys who were going over to Vietnam because they had no use for them there, but they had earned all these different medals. So it wasn't my deepest or most aware time. Okay. But I loved it. I had a boyfriend in Hawaii and one in the Philippines. And so every 2 weeks I do that, right? 2 days in each port, and I would be dating different guys. I mean, it was the greatest life, right? But that's not where I became aware.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's interesting, right, Dr. Leslie, because I know obviously like you you've had like kids, right? You've been married, you've gone through kind of like the whole spectrum of life, basically, right? Divorce. Now you're a grandma, and I know you take time to spend time with your grandkids, and you're always sharing stories about how you learn so much from your grandkids. It reminds me so much of what my aunt told me, and she always said that I learned so much from you. And she was really kind of the first person who really made me realize that like this whole age thing is really just a number, right?
Mhm.
And as I look at how you and I collaborate, I like to think that most times you probably have more energy than I do when it comes to a lot of things, and you get so excited about things. And I'm just blown away because you've been doing this for so long, but it's almost like for you it's always day one. Like you, yeah. And I
It is. It is. It's the getting to teach what I teach and getting people to understand that they do have a choice, that they can flex and exercise their conscious awareness. I mean, the idea is certainly possible, we would all say, but then it's like, how do you do it? Right. And that's where I've enjoyed the most is creating a process that people can follow that actually works and has been researched. But I will tell you, I've put in 20,000 hours. I have taught this material, Think and Grow Rich, Universal Law, done some coaching, leadership training, not only for entrepreneurs, small business owners, and spent 2.5 years at an emerging enterprise teaching the same hybrid program to CEOs and C-level executives, right? Which is really good because, you know, we don't know what we don't know, and they we're not thinking objectively at all. So it's the same work that I do, whether it's an entrepreneur, a small business owner, an emerging enterprise, one person, 10 people, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. And then every
yeah,
time I do it, like I get my vibration rises. So
yeah,
doing this 60 quarters, business quarters in a row, actually has made me young,
yeah,
right? I
I
mean,
bet.
I feel so young and I have the energy, partly, Paul, because I don't do as many things as you do. I do one
Well,
goal at a time.
yeah, no, you're right, and I learned so much from Dr. Leslie. But before we get into it, you have some big fans here in the audience, as always, Dr. Leslie. Amber's here, and she said that she went to travel school. She, I went to be a travel school to be a travel agent stewardess before I got married. She wanted to see the world too, so it seems like you got another.
Oh, I
And I'm
didn't
not.
know that. I didn't know that, Amber. Oh, how
Yeah,
fun.
I'm not sure if you've met Angelica. She's one of my friends, and she says, I can see myself there. I lived in Hayward and have crossed the Bay Bridge to San Francisco many a time. She does a lot of audio and live video events. I would definitely, if I'm sure she'll probably send you the
Oh, I'm
connection request.
aware of Angelica, and I that's where Travis Air Force Base is in Hayward County across the Bay Bridge. So I spent a lot of time in Hayward and in that area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it seems like
that's
you guys have a lot, and then we have our magical friend here, my
Michael.
soul brother Michael Paterano. Have you had a chance to chat with Michael yet, or is
Are
that
you
Saturday?
kidding? I already did last Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, you had the magical. What a magical person! I can't wait for their audio event tomorrow. And we have another dear friend, right, Omar,
Oh,
and
there's
his.
Omar.
I know you've participated. Didn't you win Zoom
No,
party
I
that
didn't
one?
win. I lost miserably and was not a good sport when I did Zoom because I didn't like the way they were timing things. I was in my
Yeah,
ego then, right? Well,
yeah.
you picked them first and everything. It was so much fun. Actually, it wasn't his Zoom party. It was Matt Allen's.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but I remember I was watching it. I was like, "Oh, Dr. Leslie," and I think I had something. But it's really interesting when you're talking about personal development, and I know that you and I talk all the time because in many instances you've essentially been kind of like a mentor to me. I learned so much from you, and
Thank you.
we have kind of the reverse mentoring thing because you do say that you learn a lot from me as well. But I'm
Mhm.
really curious for you when you started this whole like personal development journey. It could have been when you were younger. Who's really been kind of the most impactful mentor or person in your life, and what was the most valuable lesson that they've taught you?
Hmm. Well, it goes without saying that when I went to train with Bob Proctor, who I only knew from The Secret. I'd never heard of him. He just was this old grandfatherly dude, right? And everybody was going wild about The Secret. It was a runaway success.
Yeah,
And through a series of synchronicities, if you will, I ended up on his website. And I had been hosting monthly meetups based on the Secret and the practitioners in The Secret. We were having a ball, right? Oh, having law of attraction fairs. I mean, it took the world by storm.
yeah,
So, in terms of understanding how to apply and understand the principles of success, while Bob Proctor was the world's authority, the best teacher of the material was a fellow by the name of Paul Martinelli, who was president of Proctor's Life Success Corporation. And he was the one who would give us training videos. And for a long time, he was the only man that was ever in my bedroom on TV, on the videos. As I was getting ready, over and over and over again, I would listen to him. But, if we back up, when I was 2021, I did yoga in San Francisco, Kundalini yoga. And I was at San Francisco State, which was the hippie. It was Hippieville. I saw all the bands, Grateful Dead, Big Brother, all of them free on our campus. I was in a rock band. I was a singer and played rhythm guitar. I just did everything,
yeah,
right? Kind of like you are now. And so I've always had this propensity for the dramatic and theater and being extroverted.
yeah.
And after my 30-year marriage ended, and I spent 2 weeks in the dark
Mm-hmm.
licking my wounds, went to
Yeah,
work, but came home. I woke up one day and I said, enough of this.
yeah,
And I re registered in Landmark Education's forum, which is a weekend transformational, intense experience where you go back and you look at the originating incidents as children,
mm-hmm.
right? That had you create those beliefs. At the time, I didn't know that they were creating beliefs. All I knew is that I was still in pain, right?
Mm.
So this was
So
a
it's like a healing type of thing.
yes and no. It's more transformational. It's more into distinctions,
Hmm.
right? Everybody being right, right? That was the first time I heard something like that, right?
Mm.
Um, but I had forgotten about that till you mentioned it. And so I threw myself into Landmarks Forum. Then I did the advanced program. Then I did their next one, which is like a mastermind. I can't think of what it's called. Oh, self expression and leadership. This is around 2003, 2004. I did all of it. But, what I will say about Landmark, it was a great foundation, but it's missing all the universal laws. But I didn't know that then,
Mhm.
right? So it was the beginning of really understanding how beliefs are formed.
Yeah.
And then in 2007, out came The Secret. 2008 is when I created The Secret Society and went and studied with Bob Proctor and have never stopped since. It was a
Mm.
very expensive investment. Actually, it was in 2008 I made the investment. Actually, what happened was, and this is a lesson, that one of the biggest lessons about the universe and being possible and possibilities. I was led to his site, Proctor's site, and everything that the salesperson was describing was resonating. Oh, I was vibrating, tingling. We're going to send you Think and Grow Rich in a notebook, and you're going to gather 8 people together before you come down here to West Palm and do your training in the spring. We'll send it up to you. They were in Florida. I was in North Carolina. You find 8 people. And so I'm thinking, this is great. And I said, by the way, what the hell is Think and Grow Rich and what's a mastermind? Right. Because I had no clue what that was, but okay, I was doing it. It sounded good. It felt that this is what I was supposed to be doing. Right. It was intuition was screaming. But of course, then I said, well, how much? Right.
Oh, the golden question.
Oh my God. And the woman said $16,000. I said, fine, I'll be there. Now, I
Wow.
want you to know that I had $500 in an Edward Jones account. I had no way. She might have said 160,000, but here's the lesson. I was so clear,
Mm.
so sure, so compelled. And remember that my intuition had guided me there through
Yeah.
a series of synchronicities, right? I was so sure I never thought about the money. I
Yeah.
had 6 months, and all I thought about was they're going to send me the outline for Think and Grow Rich Mastermind, and I'm going to conduct them, and then I'm going to show up and be trained for a whole week with people from around the world, and these are the best teachers,
Mm.
right, for this subject. And then 4 months later, I got a note from my ex-husband saying, I had to cash in this stock. This is your share. It was $20,000. Now I had no idea about this, but what it shows you is I paid no attention to the money. I just knew I was going. And so when we have a definite purpose, a thing that we want to do, if we are that compelled, we will
Yeah.
outshadow fears. Not that the fear isn't there,
Mm.
but honestly, I just knew that I was going to have the money and I had no clue how. And
Yeah.
I did. The money showed up and I thought, there you go. And I
Yeah.
did.
It's no, that was like so powerful. I love when you share that story because I've definitely done that before. Like I remember when, so I went on a retreat. Well, I went on 2 retreats with my mentor last year, and she says how like people always send her messages like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to your next one. I'm gonna go to her next one." Well, I sent her the message, and then when I ended up going to the next one, she looked at me and she's like, "Do you realize like how few people actually do it?" And I feel like what's really powerful more than anything that I feel so many people don't talk about is it's really kind of keeping the promises essentially that you make to yourself, right?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
and that's for me, that's been the ultimate confidence builder is that I don't necessarily look at like if I say that I'm going to do something. Before it used to be about, oh, I'm doing it for the other person. But what's power, right? I agree with what Michael said. He said issues come up when we get stuck on the when and how. And Michael, I'm glad that you brought this up because this is something that I'm learning obviously from you and Dr. Leslie is that for me, I noticed that with the stage that I'm at right now, I used to always be able to essentially make time become irrelevant, right? Because if you do something with enough volume, time becomes irrelevant, right? You can do something so much, and then you can do in 1 year what it takes people like 10, 20 years if you do it enough. But what I'm finding is that I can't control the other people's time. And you have to kind of let things happen, or as Michael would say, you even tell me all the time, the universe. And that's really why I've bought into this whole idea of the universe because I really do believe that it's true, right? I've had that happen before where you all of a sudden you're like doing something and then somebody sends you a message out of the blue and you're like, what? I don't even know you. And
And
then
just because we don't understand yet exactly
yeah,
how it works does not mean it's not working. And
yep,
to Michael's point, the greatest achievements is done by people who did not know how.
yep,
And I did not know how I was going to get the money, but I didn't
yep,
care because my vibration was so high. It was so clear. I was so sure this is what I was going to do.
hmm,
So the lesson is when you go for something that you really want very much and you want to build a lot of motivation and be compelled to bypass the natural fear, because when you don't know how to do it, you're going to have some
yeah,
fear, but it's
for
okay
sure.
to have some fear. Actually, it's a good sign.
Hmm.
The thing is that the desire to have the thing completely obliterates fear. It overshadows it. Fear, which is usually very powerful with all of us. There
Yeah,
are six basic fears, but the two top ones are fear of criticism of other people and fear of poverty, right? Those are
hmm,
strong. And when we go to do something, I don't have the money. And what will people think?
yep,
So the ability to outweigh that and go toward that dream requires that you don't know how, that you're
yep,
open to the universe, right? That you're open to people and opportunities that show up with the answers.
yep,
And that's exactly what happened with me. To your point, very few people still do Proctor's work. Of course, it's my own work now because it's evolved into a hybrid program,
right,
but people have gone bankrupt in these big programs because I think here's the reason why these big the
hmm,
investing into the big professional development gurus,
yep,
they are really good at creating a picture for you, a vision of what it'll be like when you're
hmm,
on the stage and you're
yep,
helping people, but you didn't go with your vision. And
yep,
then you get home later and like, well, what do I do? Because they're masterful at drawing the picture of your
yep,
success. The thing is that you have to be willing to create your own picture and know when you go there what it is you want
yeah.
and not let someone else draw for you.
Yeah, it's so true. And like I remember last March when I went to the 10x Growth Con, which was my first major conference. My mentor, who's now I call her my mentor mom, she was like one of the three people that I wrote down that I went there to meet, right? And I feel like you need to have intention with everything that you do because if you don't, then what happens is it's easy for you to be persuaded and convinced to like other people. That's why if you when you go to a lot of these conferences, I don't know if they did this as much as they do it now, but like a lot of the my when I went to 10x, his salespeople like hound the heck out of you. Like they will sell and sell and sell, and like if you don't have a good answer, they're gonna because they're just doing what they're taught, right? And
Now you're talking about the sponsors at this big show that right, that reach out to you after the event and send you emails and everything, or are you
Oh
talking
no,
about
I'm talking
there
about
on the
at the
site?
event. There, so when you're at the event, they're trying to sell the event next year.
Oh,
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
crazy. Like they hound you like crazy. So if you're not clear with intention, oh, let's see. And oh, we have some new people. Elena, it was so great to meet you. I apologize. I didn't realize I was saying your name wrong. I thought it was Elena, but I found out it was Elena. You definitely have to have a conversation with Dr. Leslie. You will love her. You both are right up the
oh, we
same.
did. We connected this morning, I think, or this afternoon, didn't we, Elena?
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome. Great.
yeah.
Yeah. It was so great to see her. And who else is here? Yeah, I love what Michael said. He calls it, I call it the Coke high. 40, what is this? 48 hours lost and more desperate than before. Yeah. It's, I couldn't agree more, Michael. And I'm curious. I'm curious for you, Dr. Leslie, because you've traveled seems like all over the U.S., even internationally and over the world. You're knowledgeable in a lot of these like global religions, and you've done a lot of these things. I'm curious for you, like, so you were born and raised in Massachusetts. Am I correct?
Born in New York, raised in Massachusetts.
Born in New York, raised in Massachusetts. I'm
Mhm.
curious, right? Like you can live anywhere in the world, essentially. Why do you choose to stay in North Carolina? I'm curious.
Oh, well, grandkids.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Okay.
I mean, my children are here, and all my grandchildren now are teenagers and driving.
Yeah.
And the next step is going to be being a great grandmother.
Oh man. Have you taken like a picture yet of like generations? Like what is it?
Oh, yeah.
You're at four, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, right after COVID, or when there was a break with COVID, another one of my goals was to take them all, nine of us, on a Disney cruise.
Oh, fun.
But it had to be concierge level. I'm not
Oh,
getting into one of those little bucket, right? I've done that before where you have bruises all over your legs trying to get around the bed. I mean, this is not, I want to hold court. So my goal 18 months before we left was to get two suites on the
wow.
11th floor, which is the concierge. Now, keep in mind that oddly enough, the two suites were $16,000 again, the same figure. Right now, I use several quarters, business quarters, right? But I did actually, right, accrue the money outside of other expenses, and
Yeah.
we went, and I held court. We had big concierge suites. We had
Yeah.
free drinks. I mean, it was heavenly, and the kids had a ball.
Yeah.
So that was another time where and that's more than 12 weeks, right? That's the
Yeah.
typical amount that I use. But in this instance, I use several 12 weeks to generate the income to cover
Yeah.
that kind of trip.
No, it's really interesting that you're talking about that because that was a topic of conversation that we were having in one of my communities. I've felt this way for probably the past I want to say maybe like 5 years. Like
Mhm.
when when I got to the point where I had to support my family, I stopped caring about a lot of these materialistic things because I was just
Mhm.
like, what's the point, right? Like
Mhm.
there's gonna be a time when everything's all said and done, we can't take it with us when we go. And I used to just see people waste all their money to look rich, but really they just, look silly, basically. And we were talking about this idea of it's important to invest in like experiences and creating memories instead
Mhm.
of like buying stuff. And when I
Mhm.
was in my finance career, I would always run into like people who are like, oh, I don't have money. But when you like see in their like how in their background, you see the designer bags, you see all this stuff, like the money was all over. They it was how they spent it and or invested it.
Mhm.
And that is a really key point. I'm curious for you because very rarely do I anyway get the privilege to talk to a lot of people in my network. Oh, my thing fell off. Especially in my network who've been around and have so as much life experience as you have. I'm curious for you, right? Technology, and you and I kind of talk about it sometimes, right? You
Mhm.
have this kind of love-hate relationship, more on the kind of hate side with it because of the what you've been used to. But how has it been for you to really see this whole technology thing kind of basically be birthed, and then now you've seen it kind of evolve to what it is now?
Yeah, I learned to type on a manual typewriter. And I never had carpal tunnel because you had to keep your hands up like this because you had strength in your fingers to push those keys down,
Mm,
right? Once the electronic keyboard, everybody's came along, everybody's wrists dropped, right, with the electronic keyboard. So that's where the carpal tunnel came from. So I started back then, and then I moved into magnetic tapes, electric typewriters, and IBM Mag card typewriters that didn't yet have a screen.
wow.
Yet they had a card, right, that contained all the information. Or with the magnetic tapes electric typewriter, there was this big, loud, noisy machine. It's a word processor, right? They had a tape on one side and a tape on another, and you would make changes as this tape moved. I think there might have been a display screen back then. Then there was the Deckmate. Then came the Tandy Radio Shack with the 8-inch discs,
Mm,
right? Those things, the big floppy disk. So I actually have worked, right, and gone through this electric typewriter, right, the
wow.
mag card typewriters, the word processors, and then it was one screen, right, where you could see. I think it was Xerox that had one line of code.
Yeah.
So I've stayed right with it. The thing that I've noticed, Paul, is years ago there was a little thing that came out, a new innovative thing. I can't even find it on the internet anymore.
Hmm.
It was called Poken, Poken. And no, this is not
I think I've heard
anime.
of it. I've heard of it.
Okay. It was this little person or little animal device that actually allowed you to connect with another person's phone.
Mm,
Oh, and listen, it was the hottest thing, and we got jewels, and we were gluing jewels and sequins on our pokins, and we go networking, and we touch our pokins, right? Right. But that went away fast.
yeah.
And so that's then when Bitcoin came out, I remembered Pokin. There was
Mm,
something that wasn't right about Bitcoin.
mm,
Who I was not going to invest time and energy in another fly by night right thing, which
yeah.
as it turned out that it was questionable. So my intuition was right, but I also don't spend a lot of time on things that that don't have value to me, and that did
Mm,
not have any value. Now with the internet, with AI, what is not good about it is that the rules were not set up in advance,
mm,
right? The same thing happened with the internet. It got way down the road before people started saying, well, we really ought to be watching, or should we have some rules, or right,
yeah.
should the government, right? Well, and now we're faced with AI, and that's even more powerful. And there people are concerned that that it'll be teaching us, right, or
Yeah.
we'll be following it. So I stay. It's been fun. Okay, it's been interesting to watch it all, right? However, I'm very selective now about where I'm going to invest my time.
Mm,
I like people that want to work on these things, and I want to know enough to ask a question or two,
yeah.
but I am not investing time in these new things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, cool, right? How you're talking about how you went from like this manual typewriter type of thing, and now we have like AI, which is basically you can accelerate things like instantly. And I'm curious for you, right? Because when I look at my generation, I see it very differently than a lot of other people. They feel like they're going to be the world changers and that they just don't take anything, but it's like the way that I see it, as there's so much entitlement now, because it's like,
Mm.
because of this thing right here, you have the entire world at your fingertips, right? And if you, and I'm sure you can even you notice it with your grandkids, right? Like, so many times when things aren't going well, or you have a baby crying or whatever, what do? We just give them the phone, give them the iPad, right? And where I'm curious how this goes, because I asked people this question when I went on TikTok, and they tell me that my video is too long. I was like, my video isn't even 1 minute. And I was like, if you can't watch this video for 1 minute,
No
how,
focus.
like, how,
Everybody's lost their focus, Paul.
right, exactly. It's like, how are people going to get degrees? Like, how, if you can't watch something for 1 minute, how are you going to do something that takes 4 years to do, right? Like, if they can't watch something for 1 minute, how in the heck are they going to do one of your goals for 12 weeks?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting kind of conversation to really unpack, because this is essentially kind of what the way that our future in many instances is looking. I was talking to one of my connections, and she's like, here I am making some video to like teach people about health, and I get like 1,000 views on TikTok, and some person eating a darn burger gets like almost 1 million hits, right? And it's just, it's so interesting to see the the things that we give not only our time, attention, and money to, but just like you said, focus, right? So I'm really curious for you, because you talked about how you haven't always been this. I feel like I say it all the time. You're one of the most brilliant people that I've met. What are, like, would you say, two or three actionable kind of tips that you've really implemented on your journey to kind of get to where you are, that other people could utilize to maybe become more focused, become more disciplined, gain more awareness, if you will?
Well, one of the things is to continue learning, right? That's one of, excuse me, I got a cough. Continue learning. Learning is the miracle grow for humans. You know, you can have two gardens and they're both in the sun and they're doing well. And one of them you give miracle grow, doesn't affect the other one. It's still doing well, but the miracle grow flourishes. Human beings are the only living thing that can take an idea, which is thought energy, and turn it into physical form, which is matter. So, our gift is to learn better how to manage our thoughts so that we can have the things that we want. But we don't just get the pot of gold at our feet from the universe. You have to continue learning, right? And you're going to be confused. You got to sit with it. So remember that out of confusion comes order. That's a natural law. So when you learn something new, it's very often confusing. That's okay. Then you'll hear it again from someone else with different words down the road, and you're at a higher level of awareness and you'll get it. Oh, now I get it. So this goes a long way to understanding that while today I might not agree with something that's going on because I really don't understand it, tomorrow I may understand it. So not to count anything out, right? Based on your current level of knowledge and expertise, because we're always learning. So that's the thing. You're squandering. If I'm not continually learning and giving this information to other people, I'm squandering my gift. This was my gift from my God, your God, that we can do this alchemy, right? So while I cough again, you talk.
No, and I remember you talk about this idea that we're alchemists, and
Mhm.
it's interesting because I remember one of our very first interactions. You talked a lot about Think and Grow Rich, and it's like, I've heard about it, all the time in my professional circles, but I hadn't actually read it, and it was because I was reading the scrolls, and then you came on the scrolls, and you were like, oh, in many instances they're like kind of one and the same, right? Like teaching a lot of the
Correct.
same. the same thing.
That may because Think and Grow Rich is the source over the last 100 years for all these hybrid programs, including Augmentinos. If
Yeah.
you know Think and Grow, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that. Listen, all our programs are based on other people's stuff.
Yeah.
I actually wonder, do we actually own anything?
Yeah.
Because we didn't create those ideas. Ideas are already here in the universe and they circulate
Yeah.
from the thought energy to us, then go through us if we take them through for 12 weeks,
Yeah.
and we manifest it into whatever that achievable thing, money, a mouse, a
Yeah.
microphone, whatever it is that you want. So the vibration, the way you feel while you're moving towards your goal, this is
Yeah.
really important, is the DNA of
Mm.
manifestation, where you have a physical seed. Let's just take an acorn as an example. It's dying as it's laying on the ground. If you were to slice it open and look at it under a microscope, you wouldn't see an oak tree. But what you'll see there is the DNA required once it's planted to root, to draw the nutrients from the sun and the soil, etc. And then we can predict when the oak tree will break ground.
Yeah.
Well, a spiritual seed is almost the same
Mm.
because it must go through us with
Yeah.
our thinking about it, visualizing it, being excited about it, raising our cellular vibration about it,
Yeah.
in consistent spaced intervals over time. And that's enough DNA when the time is right to produce the material form.
Yeah.
So I hope that's helpful.
No, it's so powerful, and it's like I've one of my favorite things about our conversations is like I understand things, but I don't really know the whole like specifics on the whole conscious subconscious type of thing, which is kind of like where you really are a master and you explain things to me and I'm like, oh, okay, I get this now. I'm curious, like one of the most probably like profound things that my mentor shared with me is this idea that it doesn't take a lifetime to build a completely different life, and she says that we're one decision away from a completely different life. I'm curious, like can you speak to that from a conscious and subconscious level? Because I know for me, the one decision that I've made recently was to control my energy, and I realized that that one like decision goal that I had led to exercising more, led to drinking more water, leading to eating healthier, meditation, and like getting my sleep back on track, and all these type of things. I'm curious if you can speak to that from both a conscious and subconscious level, how that kind of really like all works, if that makes sense.
Ask it another way because you went off on a tangent. So I need you to ask it again.
Um, so there's this idea that we're one decision away from a
Oh, okay. I got it. I got it. I got it. Well, one idea is all it takes, right? So you really are one decision away. So here's the thing, if you're willing to take action on it. So you could have a new idea and make a decision to do something new, but are you willing? Are you compelled? Are you motivated? And if you're not, what happens is you begin to work on it, then you let it go. Where do you think it goes? It circulates back in the universe, and that's how the guy on the West Coast got your idea. Remember, Leslie, we talked about this. I even worked on this, right? But you let it go. Ideas do not die. They will find another conscious mind, and it is your conscious mind that receives the ideas. Now, most of us, like probably 95% of us, are only aware of receiving ideas through our five senses: see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, right? But people like Thomas Edison and people that are in the work that I'm doing, there are other faculties that rarely does anybody know. But boy, let me tell you, the intellectual faculties in your conscious mind are like powerhouses: perception, imagination, intuition, memory, reason, and will or focus. These are all things that we can practice. And it's all about beating the limiting belief, which as soon as you get a new idea, one of those beliefs is going to push its way into your conscious mind and take over your thoughts. What a bad idea, Paul. You've never done that before. And then you go, right. That's true. I never have, right? But the mental muscles work like any other muscle. They grow in direct proportion to their use. So just a simple example is perception, right? Well, this goes along with everybody being right. Perception is how you see the world. But after this is over, you're going to see new things. So we argue about being right. Oh, our point of view is right. We should do it this way. But the reality is, your perception and your view is always changing. So you have to ask yourself, what would happen if we never argued right or wrong? What will we talk about? So the next step is well, Paul, why are you so sure that this is the best way to do it? Fill me in.
Yeah.
Because you're right. You don't know everything. And where we learn is that next step, rather than insisting that we be right and make someone else wrong, which is, as Covey says, that's a win-lose.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't have to do that. So that's what I do. If I see someone they just have to be right, they're just sure their way, I say, well, tell me about it. What don't I know about your way? And every time there's something that I can find that I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that because I remember one of your first LinkedIn Live events that I went on. I believe it was when you were talking about Think and Grow Rich, because we were talking about how it's very similar. And you asked something about like what is the most like important. I can't remember the exact question because it was kind of a while ago, but it was something along the lines of what is like the most like important thing. Or and you talked about this idea of, I don't know if it was idea or like thoughts or something, but I thought it was like clarity or cure. I can't remember. But you were like, oh, I never thought about that. And I just feel like that's the power, especially of this platform, is that you have people from all over the world, people with different experiences,
Yeah.
perspectives, age demographics, ethnic backgrounds, genders, right? All these type of things. And it's just really cool to take a step back and really be like, wow, like that's like really fascinating. And seems like you got a lot of people in the audience chiming in. Have you met Stephen Matthew Clark?
We've connected.
Oh, good. Yeah, you definitely have to have a conversation with him. I won't spoil anything, but you will definitely be wowed by him. And Amber says, "Yep, learn something new every day." And yeah, Michael, I'm starting to realize that too. Is that there's nothing new. It's just that we see things differently. Because it's like a lot of times for me, I hear a lot of things, and I was like, "Oh, that's new to me," but it's really just saying things kind of in a different
In a
way.
different way. That's why I
Yeah.
had a co-host today, right, on the audio, to bring in her work in that perspective, right,
Mhm.
based on that concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we're not always ready to hear it
Mhm.
when we first hear it,
Yeah.
right? And so then someone else will say something. But all of this is reworked.
Yeah.
And the reason that we need people sharing the same, if you will, or similar views on conscious mind, subconscious, all that, whatever it is that you're talking
Right.
about, is it, okay. So look at it this way. Let's say I have a big prism in my hands and we're
Mhm.
all in the same room, all of
Yep.
us, and we're sitting in chairs around the room, and I hold the prism in the middle of the room, and I ask you to look at the room through the prism.
Mm.
The room doesn't change, but every single view is slightly different. And
Yeah.
so, who's to say that this one isn't as important as this one is this one?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Right.
that particular example helped me a lot in realizing that everybody's view is valid for them. In fact, it's a fact. The fact is that which is a case. It is the case for you right now that you see it this way, but
Yep.
it's not static or frozen. It's
Mhm.
growing, right? It's evolving. You're learning, you're becoming more aware, you're learning the nuances, and that's the fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fascinating, right? Because you and I are obviously at different stages in life, but one of the things that they've always talked about, or that you see so many people talking about, is like a bucket list, right? I'm curious for you, like, one was that, did you have like a bucket list, and like,
I've
if
pretty
you,
well done it all my
I,
life.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure you've filled out your bucket list. But before we close, I just have a couple more questions for you, Dr.
Yes,
Leslie. One,
yes.
you what has been probably like the most magical experience? I know we talked about it on one of our audio events, but I know some people probably didn't hear it. You've been to pretty much all over the world. You've met, celebrities, some of the most successful people in the world. You've trained, you've essentially kind of done it all. What is probably the most magical moment that you will remember from your life?
The birth of my children.
Mhm.
You can't know what it's like. You will one day kind of sense what it's like, but that's a miracle. Now, we have everyday miracles, right? There are lots of them, but it's a commonplace miracle.
Yeah,
That's what I'll remember is the birth of my daughter and then my son. It's
yeah.
pretty significant, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating because you still like, there's still such a big part of your life. Like, I know you spend time with your grandkids every week, and
Mhm.
when we see each other on these events, I remember you're always like sharing stories and all these type of things. And it's so cool because so many grandparents, like I remember for me, because I grew up with my grandparents, I would play like sports and do all these type of things, but my grandparents couldn't really do a lot of the things. Like, I would practice by myself usually and all these type of things. It's just neat that you're still able to kind of be present and still do a lot of things that they do and they want to do. And I'm curious for you, because a big thing for me with my aunt and my grandparents was like playing like board games and like puzzles. Is that like
We did
something?
that on the cruise. We do
Oh,
that. My son and his family does more board games. I
cool.
used to play cribbage, and it was really a hard time trying to get people to play cribbage. And I played chess with my grandson, and
Mm,
I was actually a pretty good chess player at one time. Um, I just, it's my life now is 20 hours of working
mm,
and 20 hours of doing whatever I can to be around my grandkids. I want them to remember me,
mm,
right? I want them to remember Nana.
yeah.
So I spoil them rotten as often as I can.
And it's so awesome, like Dr. Leslie, as you've kind of taken us on this journey of your fascinating life. I'm kind of curious for you, from kind of your perspective, and after this I'll give you final thoughts. What do you really kind of want your legacy, and like, how do you want people to kind of see you, and what do you want to be really known for, like when everything's kind of said and done?
Mm. Well, it may be my 10th book, which is the first fiction, which was written over 20 years, and it was all done through visualization. So, my goal, my intention for that book, which is written in a series of episodes, is not only for it to be a bestseller, which I've done that before, domestic and international,
Yeah.
but that it will be picked up by one of the streaming stations and become a movie or a series. It is the most incredible, surreal, phantasmagorical love story taking place on another planet that evolved from a baseball game by the constellations in the sky. That's how
Wow.
the planet. It's way out there, and the planet is inhabited by spirits, and
Wow.
they're selected based on their virtues and values and the good deeds they've done. And on this planet, wild truffles grow, and the truffles are what is traded with other planets for goods, etc.
Wow.
So it's actually published. So if anybody really wants to read it, I can send you a link. But that my plan is for to launch it in the spring, and I would like that to be something I'm remembered for, and also for just well, not for just for always being there to support others and giving as much as I can. Right, I'm forever building my karmic bank account with good deeds. You
That, that
can't have too many.
that's a good way to think about it. Like I've been figuring out, like, I'll be honest, I'm still figuring out this whole spirituality thing, but I feel like more than anything, karma was really like the one thing that I really kind of identified to in this whole idea of what goes around comes around. And I always knew that because I always helped so many people and like weird things would happen, I'd be like, oh, I guess, like, what goes around comes around. I didn't really understand it all. And I think now more than ever, as I've gotten older and you get to kind of experience and be around people who've been around and have been doing this for a while, you kind of learn from that experience. Thank you for the check in. Yeah, Cheryl, thank you so much for being here. This has been an incredible event. Dr. Leslie, thank you so much for being here. Before we close out, I will give you the final words and anything that you want to share or promote. She's an absolute genius. Everybody, if you haven't had a conversation with Dr. Leslie, you absolutely have to. I don't collaborate with everyone. I'm very selective with the type of people that I collaborate, and I don't. We've been doing our series for probably about like 3 months now, right? Like 3 to 4 months, yeah. And it's been incredible. We've gone through all the thinking things, and we're still coming up with new topics. It's been a pleasure for me. So yeah, anything you want to
Thank
share?
you. Uh, well, if you want to catch up with me, Monday at 10 o'clock is Mind Over Matter Monday, audio room. Tuesday afternoon with Paul. He hosts What Are You Thinking About One Subject or Another. And I just opened today. Is today Wednesday? It is. At 1 o'clock, the 12 Laws of High Achievement. This is a culmination of the work I've been doing for 15 years so that people will have the right check or have a checklist when you set your goal. I discovered that we know anywhere between 6 and 9 of the 12, but the other ones are counterintuitive, and they're the ones that hang us up on always achieving. And then Friday, that's Wednesday at 1 for 30 minutes. Each week, I'll do a different law of achievement. And then Friday at 10 a.m., I do the lessons in Think and Grow Rich. So all of this is for you to continue learning. And of course, if you want to be guided by me, you can work with me, right? But remember, you got to be willing and you got to want it, right? Because it's an investment. So if you want to do this, I will teach you the process and you will create all these new beliefs. But in the meantime, intellectually, eat it all up. Get as much as you can and enjoy it. You're supposed to be having a good time. It took me a whole lifetime to get here. But I can tell you, the universe does have your back. Your access to the universe and God and all energy, spirit, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, God, however you want to look at it, it's one omnipresent force that never runs out and enters your conscious mind through your intuition and imagination. That's where those wild ideas come from. They have nothing to do with negative beliefs. So look up. Something good is always coming. In the next 3 days, phenomenal things can happen. Be looking for them. And Paul, thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh man, my mind always gets blown. Like I always have to like take a step back and be like, man, like what did I just listen to? The good thing that this is on replay, right? People can go back and
Yes,
watch this again. But no, it's always an honor to spend time with you, Dr. Leslie, and thank you so much for everyone who's been here in the audience, everything that you've shared tonight. It's always a pleasure to be able to spend time with you, to learn from you, and yeah, I'm sure you and I will see each other very soon again on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being here.
my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank
Alrighty,
you.
bye everyone. Have a great night.